Have you ever had that one moment, that single frozen second in time where your entire life splits in two? There's the before, a picture you thought was real, and then there's the after, where the picture shatters. And then you see the ugly truth hiding behind the frame. For me, that moment wasn't a car crash or a sudden diagnosis. It was a piece of paper, a thick, legal document delivered to my door that would unravel everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and the woman I called my wife. My name is Alex, and for 12 years, I believed I was living a dream. Sarah wasn't just my wife. She was my best friend. We built a life from scratch. I started a small tech consulting business, working 80-hour weeks, fueled by coffee and the vision of a future we'd designed together. A future with a big house, maybe kids and security. She was better with numbers. She said it made sense. I was the dreamer building the empire. She was the architect, making sure it stood on solid ground, or so I thought. Our life looked perfect from the outside, the kind of life you see in glossy magazines. But if you looked closer, you might have seen the cracks. Her password suddenly changed. I dismissed it. Stress, I told myself. We're both working so hard. I was building our future, blind to the fact she was already planning her exit. Sarah handled our finances. The way Sarah became distant, always on her phone. The end began, as these things often do, with a single sentence. We were having a quiet dinner when Sarah put down her fork, looked me straight in the eye, and said the words that felt like a physical blow. Alex, I'm not happy. I haven't been for a long time. I want a divorce. The room spun. I couldn't breathe. I asked her what I did wrong, how we could fix it, if we could go to counseling. But her eyes, they were cold, empty. This wasn't the woman I loved. This was a strategist. She was already 10 steps ahead of me. She handed me a business card. I've already retained a lawyer. His name is Mark Rinaldi. You'll be hearing from him. The name meant nothing to me then, but it would soon become a name I'd curse in my sleep. Mark Rinaldi. From the moment I met him, something felt off. He was too smooth, too prepared. The divorce papers he filed were brutal. They painted me as an absent workaholic who had emotionally abandoned my wife. They demanded alimony that would cripple me, and they laid claim to my business, the very company I'd bled for, which was now on the verge of a major breakthrough. I was drowning. I hired my own lawyer, a good man named Ben, but it felt like we were always playing defense. Mark was always one move ahead. He knew about business expenses I'd forgotten, about old bank accounts, about every financial move I'd ever made. It was like he had a blueprint of my life. One evening, drowning my sorrows, I scrolled through old photos on my phone, my heart aching for the woman I'd lost. And then I saw it. A picture from a company holiday party 2 years ago. There was Sarah laughing, and standing right behind her, with a hand resting casually on her shoulder, was Mark Rinaldi. My blood ran cold. How did they know each other? Why was he at my company party? The first seed of a terrifying suspicion was planted. But I had no proof. It was just a feeling, a ghost in the machine of my crumbling life. The legal battles dragged on for months. My savings were evaporating, my business was suffering, and the stress was eating me alive. My lawyer, Ben, fought hard, but Mark's arguments were airtight. He seemed to have an almost psychic knowledge of our finances. Desperate, I decided to clean out the garage, a task Sarah had always handled. Maybe I was just looking for a distraction, a piece of our old life. In a box of old tax documents, I found it. Tucked inside a manual for a printer we no longer owned was a small black USB drive. I almost threw it away, but something told me to look. I plugged it into my laptop. My hands were shaking. There were only 2 files on it. One was a spreadsheet. As I opened it, my world stopped. It was a detailed line-by-line plan, a timeline for the divorce, projected alimony numbers, the valuation of my company. It was a financial and emotional hit job, perfectly calculated, and it was dated from over a year ago, a year before she even asked for the divorce. But the second file was what broke me. It was a picture, Sarah and Mark on a sunny beach wrapped in each other's arms. They were laughing, looking into each other's eyes with an intimacy that was unmistakable. The timestamp was from 8 months ago. The receipt for my own destruction, signed, sealed, and delivered with a kiss. The lawyer wasn't just her lawyer. He was her secret lover. And this whole divorce, this brutal, soul-crushing process, wasn't about unhappiness. It was a coordinated heist. They weren't just trying to take my money. They were trying to take my future, the business I built for us, and hand it to each other. The betrayal was so complete, so vicious. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I didn't cry. I just sat there in the cold, silent garage, my heart turning to stone. I gave the USB drive to Ben, my lawyer. He was speechless. This was evidence of a massive conflict of interest, of fraud on the court. He immediately filed motions to have Mark removed from the case and to overturn the previous rulings. The tide was turning. The look on Mark's face in the courtroom when the judge confronted him, it was a small, cold comfort. But the legal process was still a slog. They had already drained so much from me. The fight for justice felt like it was just preventing a total loss, not a victory. And then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. The area code was unfamiliar. 907. I almost didn't answer. I was so tired of bad news. Sound of a phone ringing, then being picked up. Narrator, hello, am I speaking with Mr. Alex Miller? A woman's voice asked, polite and professional. This is he, I said, my voice flat. Mr. Miller. My name is Eleanor Vance. I'm calling from the probate court in Juneau, Alaska. I've been trying to locate you for some time. Alaska? I'd never been to Alaska. I thought it was a scam. What is this regarding? It's regarding your great-uncle, Arthur Milliman. Arthur. I had a vague memory of a gruff, eccentric old man who'd send me a fossil or a weird rock for my birthday. When I was a kid, he was a geologist, a prospector. We all thought he was a bit of a dreamer. I hadn't heard from him in over a decade. I'm sorry to inform you that Mr. Milliman passed away 6 months ago, Eleanor continued. As his sole surviving relative, you are the named beneficiary in his will. My mind was reeling. I see. Thank you. What? What is the estate? There was a rustle of papers on the other end of the line. After settling his debts and taxes, the estate's value, primarily from the sale of his mineral claims, comes to $4,200,000. I dropped the phone. $4.2 million. The exact same amount that Sarah and Mark had, meticulously calculated as the total value of my business and assets they were trying to take. The number felt like it was echoing through the universe, a cosmic joke of the highest order. I stood there in my half-empty apartment and I started to laugh. It was a wild, unhinged sound, a release of all the pain and anger. Alaska had called, and it changed everything. With the inheritance, I was no longer fighting from a position of weakness. I was a fortress. I instructed Ben to go on the offensive. We sued Mark for legal malpractice and conflict of interest. His reputation was destroyed. He was disbarred within the year. As for Sarah, the final divorce settlement was the ultimate irony. We were back in court one last time. She and her new lawyer, because Mark was long gone, sat across from me. They were still expecting a large payout. My lawyer, Ben, stood up. Your Honor, he said, his voice calm and powerful, given the newly discovered evidence of my client's wife's collusion with her former counsel and the dissipation of marital assets in pursuit of that affair, we move that my client, Mr. Miller, owes $0 in alimony. Furthermore, we motion for my client to receive a lump sum payment from Ms. Miller to cover a portion of his legal fees, as her actions directly necessitated this prolonged litigation. I looked at Sarah, the color drained from her face. The confident, cold mask she had worn for so long finally crumbled, replaced by sheer, unadulterated shock. She had played her hand, thinking she held all the cards, but the deck had been reshuffled by a kind old man in Alaska she never knew existed. She got nothing. Not a single cent of my business. Not a single cent of the inheritance. The empire she and Mark tried to steal was now mine, and mine alone, fortified by a fortune they could never touch. There was no shouting, no dramatic confession, just the quiet, hollow sound of the gavel striking wood. Justice, cold and final, had been served. People ask me if I'm happy now. The truth is, the money didn't heal the wounds. The betrayal by Sarah and Mark left scars that will never fully fade. You don't just get over that kind of breach of trust. The inheritance wasn't a happy ending. It was a tool for justice, a tool for survival. It allowed me to rebuild my business bigger than ever. It allowed me to start a charity that helps people who are victims of financial fraud in divorces. I found a purpose in my pain. The lesson I learned, the moral of this entire crazy story, is that life has a strange way of balancing the scales. Karma isn't always a punishment. Sometimes it's a quiet, unexpected blessing that arrives exactly when you've lost all hope. Sarah and Mark were so focused on the treasure in front of them, they operated in the shadows, thinking no one was watching. But the universe was, and it responded not with anger, not with violence, but with a quiet, powerful truth. What is done in the dark will always, always come to the light. So if you're in your own dark place, if you feel like you've been betrayed and there's no way out, hold on, be patient. Live with integrity, even when those around you have none. Your Alaska might be waiting. It might not be a phone call about money. It might be a new idea, a new person, a new strength you find within yourself. But the turn will come. The page will turn. And when it does, you'll realize that the greatest revenge isn't hatred. It's peace. It's building a life so good, so full of meaning, that the betrayal becomes nothing more than a footnote in the story of how you became who you were always meant to be.